My name's Jacob. I'm 32, married for 6 years, and if you asked me 2 months ago what I thought of my younger sister Qley, I would have told you she's a bit of a diva, but deep down, she means well. That she's dramatic in a bridezilla-light kind of way, but not malicious. And most of all, that family is family. I would have been wrong on all counts. Dead wrong. See, I used to believe that when you grow up in the same house, share the same parents, eat the same boxed mac and cheese at the same worn-down kitchen table, it creates this invisible bond, something stronger than arguments, louder than resentment. I thought we had that. But turns out, shared blood doesn't mean shared values. And sometimes, the person you defend the longest is the one who's been quietly sharpening the knife the whole time. This all started about 9 months ago when Qley got engaged to her longtime boyfriend, Brandon. Now, I say longtime generously. They dated on and off for 3 years, mostly off. But then he proposed after a beach vacation that was supposed to be a breakup trip. Whatever. They were happy, and I was happy for them. My wife, Liv, was the first to text her congratulations. That's the kind of person Liv is. Warm, thoughtful. The kind of person who remembers what someone's favorite flower is and makes sure it's on the table when they visit. Qley's never had many close friends. Not real ones, anyway. She tends to cycle through people. Either they get tired of her high-maintenance personality, or she cuts them off the second they disagree with her. So when the engagement happened and Qley started panicking about the wedding, venue, theme, bridesmaids, the whole production, Liv offered to help. And by help, I mean she basically became the unpaid wedding planner. Liv has a background in event coordination. She did it part-time before switching into marketing. She's good at it. Scary good. Organized, creative, calm under pressure. And when Qley realized that hiring a professional planner would cost more than her entire dress budget, she leaned in hard on Liv. And Liv? She just smiled and said, "Whatever you need." It started small, just a few vendor recommendations. Then venue research. Then drafting the budget. Before we knew it, Liv was making spreadsheets, organizing the tasting menu, managing the guest list, helping pick out color swatches, and even sourcing discounted centerpieces from a florist friend. Weekends vanished. Evenings too. Our dining room became the wedding war room. There were binders. I'm not even joking, actual binders. At first, I didn't mind. It made Liv happy to help. And Qley seemed genuinely appreciative. She'd send Liv thank you texts, tag her in Pinterest boards, even say things like, "I don't know what I'd do without you." But there was always this edge to it. Like Qley expected more. Like the gratitude was performative, and behind it, there was this ticking clock of entitlement. I didn't say anything. Not then. Then came the dress incident. Qley had scheduled a dress fitting out of town. I offered to drive, but she insisted it'd be more special if it was just her and Liv. I thought that was sweet. I even gave Liv my blessing to take a full day off work for it. She was hesitant, said she didn't want to disappoint her team, but Qley practically begged her. So they went. Made a whole day of it. Lunch, boutique hopping, selfies. Liv came home that night exhausted, but glowing. Said Qley had found the dress. The one. She even teared up when describing the moment. 3 days later, Qley posted a photo on Instagram. Her in the dress. Not a hint of Liv anywhere. No tag. No mention. No thank you to my amazing future sister-in-law. Just a long, sentimental caption about how this moment was everything I ever dreamed of and so grateful to be surrounded by love. I noticed. And so did Liv. She brushed it off at first. Said it wasn't a big deal. That Qley probably just forgot. But I could tell it stung. Not because she wanted the spotlight, but because she'd poured herself into making everything perfect, and Qley was acting like she'd done it all on her own. I should have stepped in then. Said something. Set boundaries. But I didn't. I told myself it wasn't worth the drama. That it would blow over. It didn't. Over the next few weeks, the demands ramped up. Qley wanted changes to the seating chart, again. The flower order had to be revised because she saw a new trend on TikTok. She wanted custom wedding favors, but they had to be on brand. Every time Liv hesitated or gently suggested that it might be too much, Qley would pull the "it's my only wedding" card. Sometimes with tears, sometimes with guilt tripping. Once with a full-on tantrum in our living room when Liv reminded her we still hadn't gotten an RSVP from Brandon's cousin. But Liv didn't crack. She just kept going. She stayed up late redesigning the invitations when Qley changed her mind last minute. She called the venue when Qley decided the arch wasn't the right shade of white. She even arranged a makeup trial after Qley fired her stylist for not getting the vibe. Qley was a storm. Liv was the umbrella. And I was starting to feel like the idiot holding the umbrella open while the storm tore through our life. One night, I asked Liv, "Why are you doing all this?" She looked at me and said, "Because I want to be part of something special. Because she's your sister." That sentence stayed with me. Because it was said with hope, with heart. And I knew, deep down, I didn't deserve someone like Liv. Not really. She was showing up, giving her all, to a person who didn't see her as family, just as a convenience. Then came the text. It was 4 days before the wedding. I was in the middle of folding laundry when my phone buzzed. It was from Qley. Just one sentence. "She's not welcome anymore." I stared at it for a full minute, thinking it must be a mistake. Or a joke. But no follow-up came. Just that. No explanation. No context. Just cold, calculated rejection. I replied with a question mark. She responded 5 minutes later. "I don't want Liv at the wedding. She's making it about herself. Tell her not to come." My hands started shaking. I walked into the kitchen where Liv was arranging gift bags for the guests, each labeled, each filled with hand-picked treats she'd spent weeks curating. She looked up and smiled. "Everything okay?" she asked. I didn't know how to answer that. I didn't know how to explain that the woman she'd bent over backwards for had just slammed the door in her face. I sat down, handed her my phone, and watched the color drain from her face. She didn't cry. Not immediately. She just stared. And then she whispered, "Wow." That was the first crack. The first shift. Something hardened behind her eyes. And me? I wasn't shaking anymore. I was furious. And that's when we made the decision. If Liv wasn't welcome, then neither was her work. We pulled everything. The flowers. The seating chart. The decor. The vendor spreadsheets. The gift bags. The audio playlist. Every single thing Liv had touched. Every single piece of that wedding she'd poured her soul into. We stripped it out. Quietly. Methodically. Like surgeons removing a tumor. And the night before the wedding, I stood in the now empty event hall. Bare tables. Plain chairs. Mismatched linens the venue had thrown in last minute. And I knew. Qley was in for a surprise. But I wasn't prepared for what she'd do next. Because when she walked into that room and saw the skeleton of her dream wedding, she didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even say a word. She just fell silent. Then she reached for her phone. And that's when I knew she was about to make it worse. The silence in the room was thick. Not awkward. Not tense. Just heavy. Like the kind of silence you feel in your chest before a storm hits. Qley stood in the middle of the reception hall, dressed in a silky white robe with bride written across the back in gold cursive. She wasn't alone. 2 of her bridesmaids trailed behind her, whispering to each other with wide eyes, taking in the empty tables, the random chairs, the glaring absence of any floral arrangement or lighting setup. The whole space looked like someone had started to prep for a high school awards banquet and then gave up halfway through. And Qley? She just stood there, staring, mouth slightly open. Her perfectly manicured hand reached into her robe pocket and pulled out her phone. I couldn't see her screen, but I knew. She wasn't calling me. She wasn't calling the venue coordinator. She was calling my mother. I stepped forward before she could hit dial. "Don't." She looked up, blinking as if she'd forgotten I was even in the room. "Excuse me." I said, "Don't call Mom." Her jaw clenched. "Why not? You think she won't find out? That she won't freak out when she sees this mess?" "This mess," I said, stepping closer, "is what's left after we removed everything Liv planned. Every centerpiece, every favor, every printed menu, every playlist, every arrangement. You told me she wasn't welcome, remember?" She had the audacity to scoff. "You're being dramatic." "No," I said, and my voice cracked, just enough for her to notice. "You don't get to say that. Not after what you did." Her fingers tightened around her phone. "All I did was set a boundary. You blindsided her. For days before the wedding. After she planned 90% of it. You didn't even have the guts to call. You texted me like a coward." Her cheeks flushed. I didn't know her anything. I let out a breath, slow, controlled. "You owed her respect. She gave you months of her life. And you threw her out like garbage. No explanation. No thank you. Nothing." She rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath. I caught just enough of it to know it wasn't kind. "What was that?" I asked. Qley looked right at me and said, "She was making it about herself." I blinked. "How?" She kept suggesting things I didn't ask for, changing stuff, acting like she knew better. People kept saying how amazing everything looked and how I was so lucky to have Liv. Like she was the bride. Like I didn't matter. I just stared at her. My sister. My own flesh and blood. And I realized in that moment that it was never about Liv stepping over the line. It was about Kayla's ego. Her pride couldn't handle the fact that people liked Liv. That Liv made her look good. You didn't feel lucky, I said slowly. You felt threatened. Her lips parted, as if to argue, but she said nothing. And in that silence, I saw it. The truth. Clear as glass. Kayla didn't want Liv gone because of some vague boundary. She wanted credit. She wanted to erase the one person who had outshone her, even from the shadows. You told Mom yet? I asked. She hesitated. Not yet. I nodded. You will. Because you think she'll take your side. She didn't answer. And she didn't have to. I didn't go home that night. I went to a hotel. Liv wasn't there. She was at her friend's place across town. I needed space. Not from her. From the fury boiling inside me. From the inevitability of what was coming. The next morning, I woke to a flood of texts. My mom. My aunt. My cousin Jenna. All of them saying some version of what happened. Kayla says the venue is ruined. Is it true you sabotaged the wedding? Sabotaged. That was the word she chose. I could almost hear her saying it with those fake choked-back tears, painting herself as the poor victim whose jealous brother destroyed her big day out of spite. I didn't respond. I needed to talk to Liv first. She opened the door looking pale, tired, eyes puffy. But when she saw me, she smiled. A real one. Fragile, but real. You okay? She asked. I nodded. Not really. She stepped aside, and I walked in. We sat in silence for a while. Then she said, I don't regret pulling it. I don't either. But I do regret caring so much. I looked at her. You shouldn't. She sighed. I know. But I do. We stayed there most of the morning, talking, replaying everything. Every red flag we'd ignored. Every time Kayla subtly diminished her, belittled her, excluded her. It hadn't started with the dress photo. That was just the first one we couldn't ignore. There were dozens before that. The time Kayla accidentally introduced Liv to the caterer as my brother's assistant. The way she never gave Liv credit in front of the bridal party. The way she'd laugh and say, Liv's just obsessed with weddings. She probably planned hers in high school. Like Liv was some try-hard nerd desperate to live vicariously through someone else. I hadn't seen it for what it was. Not then. I see it now. The day before the wedding, Mom showed up at my apartment. I wasn't home, but Liv was packing up the last of the decor to return to the vendors. She told me later how Mom barged in without knocking. I need to talk to you, Mom said, standing in the doorway like she owned the place. Liv didn't argue. She just put down the box. What's going on? Mom asked, arms folded. Kayla says you sabotaged the venue. Liv blinked. I removed the items I personally arranged. That Jacob and I paid for. At her request. Mom scoffed. Don't play innocent. I'm not. I just think it's fair to respect her wishes. Mom narrowed her eyes. She didn't mean you couldn't come at all. She meant. No. Liv interrupted, calmly. She said I wasn't welcome. She made that crystal clear. She was emotional. She sent it in writing. For days before the wedding. No explanation. No apology. Mom didn't respond right away. Then she said, You've always been intense about things. Liv tilted her head. Intense. You get involved. You like to control things. I think maybe Kayla felt steamrolled. Liv smiled. Not a nice smile. A tired one. You think I planned her wedding for fun? I think, Mom said, stepping forward. You wanted to prove something. Liv's voice didn't rise. Not once. I wanted to help. Mom's tone sharpened. You think pulling the decorations made a point? All you did was humiliate her. And now people are talking. They're saying the wedding's cursed. Liv didn't answer. So Mom added, You owe her an apology. That was the part that broke me when Liv told me. Not the accusation. Not the insult. The fact that Mom looked her in the eye, after months of free labor, and demanded she apologize. To Kayla, the golden child. The one who could do no wrong. The favorite. I confronted Mom the same night. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. Why do you always defend her? I asked. Mom looked surprised. What are you talking about? You treat Kayla like she's made of glass. Like if we don't tiptoe around her, she'll shatter. She's sensitive. No. She's manipulative. And you let her get away with it. Mom's mouth opened, then closed. like she was searching for a script that didn't exist. Finally, she said, "She's your sister. So is Liv. She's your wife." I blinked. "You know what I mean." There was a beat of silence. Then she said, "I don't want this to ruin the wedding. It's already ruined. Please, Jacob, just talk to her. Kayla's upset. So am I. She made a mistake." "No, Mom. She made a choice." The morning of the wedding, I woke up expecting a final tantrum, a last-ditch meltdown, maybe even a postponement. Instead, I got a text from Qley. "Don't embarrass me today." No apology. No explanation. Just another command disguised as a plea. Liv didn't attend the ceremony. She said it would be too painful. I agreed. But I had to go. For myself. Not for Qley. I needed to see it. I arrived 15 minutes before the ceremony. The venue was half-baked. People were whispering. The florist had scrambled to piece something together with leftover arrangements, and the playlist was all over the place. They played the same Ed Sheeran song 3 times before someone noticed. The bridesmaids looked stressed. The groomsmen looked lost. And Qley? She looked radiant. Radiant and smug. Like none of it mattered. Like she'd won. Until the officiant made an announcement. "If anyone here has the personalized vows, please bring them forward." A pause. More whispering. Then Brandon leaned toward Qley and whispered something. Her face went pale. The vows. The printed ones Liv had coordinated with a calligrapher friend. Gone. I watched her blink. Swallow. Smile. But I knew. The cracks were forming. And then, just as the ceremony began, she reached for her phone again. And that's when I realized something. She wasn't done. She was about to make it worse. It's a strange thing, watching someone you grew up with become a stranger right in front of you. I sat in the back row of my sister's wedding, watching her glide down the aisle like a queen in exile, graceful, glowing, and completely detached from the chaos around her. Guests were whispering, exchanging confused looks, noticing the missing elements, the sparse flower arrangements, the shaky playlist, the bare-bones altar. A few people shot glances my way. One of Brandon's aunts even leaned over and whispered, "Did something happen?" I just shook my head. Qley smiled through the ceremony like nothing was wrong, like the hiccups were just part of the plan. But I knew that smile. I'd seen it before, when we were kids, and she broke something of mine and acted like I was the one being difficult. That smile was her armor. Her way of pretending the world bowed to her, because she couldn't stand facing it any other way. The ceremony itself was brief, almost clinical. The officiant skipped over the missing vows, made a clumsy joke about improvisation being the heart of love, and Brandon gave a half-hearted chuckle that didn't quite reach his eyes. I watched him closely, not because I suspected anything in particular at that moment, but because something about his whole demeanor felt off. As they kissed and were pronounced husband and wife, there was polite applause. But it was the kind of applause you hear at a school play when a kid forgets their lines, but still bows anyway. Hollow. Awkward. The reception was worse. The caterer messed up the timing, so the entrees arrived before the toasts. The DJ, someone Qley had booked last minute, accidentally played a breakup song for their first dance. There were no personalized name cards. No seating map. People milled around trying to figure out where to sit, and I ended up next to a distant cousin I hadn't spoken to since middle school. Even she leaned over and asked, "Didn't your wife plan this?" "She did," I said quietly. "She just wasn't invited." The cousin blinked. "Wait, what?" I didn't elaborate. Because what was there to say? I stayed long enough to be polite. I shook Brandon's hand, gave Qley a nod, and slipped out the back before dessert. I didn't want to see the aftermath. I didn't want to be there when Qley inevitably realized that not everything she touched turned to gold. Sometimes, when you burn the bridge that was holding your wedding together, you're the one who ends up in the river. I thought that was the end of it. But endings are rarely clean when it comes to family. The fallout came quietly, like fog rolling in. First, it was the whispers. People talking behind our backs. Family group chats buzzing with speculation. My mom calling constantly, insisting I apologize for escalating things and be the bigger person. As if I hadn't already been the bigger person by keeping quiet through months of passive-aggressive jabs and outright disrespect. Then came the smear campaign. Qley posted a lengthy, flowery reflection on social media a week after the wedding, full of vague phrases like, "Not everyone supports your happiness, and sometimes, the ones closest to you are the ones who let you down most." She never mentioned my name. She didn't have to. Her friends, most of whom barely knew me, jumped into the comments like moths to a flame. So sorry you had to go through that. You deserved better. Some people just can't handle not being the center of attention. One of them even messaged Liv directly. You really couldn't let her have her moment? Liv didn't reply. She just blocked her. But me? I didn't block anyone. I read every single word, every lie, every twisted version of events. And with each passing day, the bitterness started to rot me from the inside out. I was angry at Qley, sure, but I was also angry at myself. For not seeing it sooner. For letting it get this far. For putting Liv in that position. I stopped talking to my mom. She made her stance clear when she took Qley's side and told Liv, to her face, that family dynamics are complicated, and maybe you should have stayed in your lane. That was the last straw. I told her we needed space. And for the first time in my life, I meant it. Those first few weeks after the wedding felt like drowning. I kept waking up at 3 a.m. in cold sweats, replaying every argument I should have had, every line I should have drawn. Liv kept herself busy with work, but I could tell she was hurting. Not because she'd been excluded from the wedding. She was tougher than that. But because she felt used. Stripped down to nothing more than a set of hands and a spreadsheet. One night, I found her in our home office, staring at her laptop. She had the wedding budget open. She'd itemized every single contribution, every dollar we'd spent, every hour she'd worked. The document was 12 pages long. She didn't even notice me walk in. You planning to invoice her? I asked gently. She jumped, then gave a tired laugh. No, just needed to see it. I sat beside her. See what? That I wasn't crazy. I squeezed her hand. You weren't. She turned to me, eyes glassy. It's not just the wedding, Jacob. Your family, they never really liked me. I wanted to argue, to say she was wrong. But I couldn't, because she wasn't. My mom had always been polite, but distant. My aunts had always treated Liv like an outsider. Qley had barely masked her condescension, constantly mocking Liv's job, her hobbies, even her coffee order. And I let it slide. Over and over again. That night, I promised her I wouldn't let it slide anymore. That was the turning point. Not some dramatic speech or public call-out. Just a quiet, personal vow. The kind of promise that reshapes you from the inside out. We started pulling back. From the family. From the drama. From the expectation that we owed people our silence and our time just because we shared DNA. Liv poured herself into her career. She got a promotion within 2 months. Started leading her own team. Her confidence came back like wildfire, slow at first, then sudden and unstoppable. She was smiling again, laughing more. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I'd heard her laugh without reservation. Me? I went back to therapy. It was something I'd started in college but dropped after a few months. This time, I stuck with it. I talked about Qley, about mom, about growing up in a house where Qley's tantrums got her what she wanted and my silence got me approval. About how I learned to keep the peace even when it tore me apart. And for the first time, I started to unlearn it. I stopped apologizing for setting boundaries. I stopped answering texts out of guilt. I stopped explaining myself to people who never cared to listen in the first place. And I started building something new. Liv and I took a trip, our first real vacation in 3 years. Italy. We drank wine by the coast, wandered through cobblestone alleys, and talked about everything except the past. When we got back, we started a small event consulting business together. Nothing huge, just a side hustle. But Liv's inbox filled up fast. Apparently, word gets around when you're the only person who can turn a backyard barbecue into something out of a magazine. And me? I learned to step into her world, not as a manager, not as a planner, but as a partner. I watched her work her magic and felt nothing but awe. No jealousy, no resentment, just pride. We didn't talk to Qley for months. She didn't reach out. Neither did mom. Birthdays passed. Holidays. The group chat went quiet. I heard through the grapevine that Qley and Brandon had a rocky honeymoon. Something about him being checked out. I didn't press for details. But deep down I knew. She could only control the narrative for so long. Eventually, people started asking questions. It wasn't until early spring, 5 months after the wedding, that Qley finally reached out. A text. Just one. We need to talk. I showed it to Liv. She raised an eyebrow and said, "Your circus." So I met Qley at a quiet coffee shop on a Sunday morning. I chose the table by the window. I got there early. I watched her walk in, sunglasses on, hair pulled into a tight bun, no makeup. It was the most un-Kayla I'd ever seen her. She sat down without a word. I waited. Finally, she said, "You made your point." I blinked. "Excuse me. You pulled everything. You embarrassed me. You turned people against me." I stared at her. "You still think this is about embarrassing you?" She ignored me. "Mom's mad at both of us. Brandon won't talk about the wedding. His family thinks I'm a brat. And now no one wants to come to our housewarming." I nodded slowly. "Sounds rough." She narrowed her eyes. "You think this is funny?" "No," I said. "I think it's sad." There was a long silence. Then I asked, "Why'd you do it?" She looked away. "Because everyone loved her. More than they loved me." I exhaled, a strange mix of exhaustion and sympathy washing over me. "That's not Liv's fault," I said. "That's yours." Her eyes darted back to mine. "She earned their respect. You demanded it." She swallowed hard. And for the first time in a long time, she looked like the kid I used to protect. Vulnerable. Scared. Not cruel, just lost. "I messed up," she whispered. I nodded. "Yeah, you did." She opened her mouth, closed it, then said, "Can you fix it?" I shook my head. "No, I can't. Because some things you don't get to fix with a text, or an apology, or a brunch meeting at a coffee shop. Some things you fix by changing." And from what I could see, Kayla wasn't there yet. Not even close. There's a moment, right after someone betrays you, right after you've picked yourself off the floor and patched up the wounds, when something inside you clicks. Not in a loud, fiery way. No, it's quieter than that. Calmer. Like the sound of a door closing softly behind you. That's how I felt walking out of the cafe that day, after Kayla asked if I could fix what she broke. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel pain. I felt clarity. She wasn't sorry, not really. She was just embarrassed. Ashamed that her social circle was starting to crack. That the picture-perfect wedding she bragged about for months had turned into a whisper-worthy train wreck. That the husband who once called her his muse now spent more time at the gym than at home. But I wasn't going to fix any of that for her. Instead, I was going to remind her who she underestimated. Not just me. Liv. The person who held her entire wedding together like invisible thread and never once asked for credit. The woman she treated like a prop. Who she threw away, not because she failed, but because she shined too brightly. I hadn't planned on revenge, not at first. But life has a funny way of setting the table when you stop being afraid to pull up a chair. And within a week of that coffee shop conversation, the opportunity practically served itself. It started with a phone call from a former vendor. Chelsea. She ran a high-end event venue in the city. We'd worked with her during the initial wedding planning phase. Liv had developed a great rapport with her. Professional, poised, and wickedly funny. Chelsea called out of the blue asking if we were still doing private event consulting. "I've got a problem, bride," she said. "She's sweet on the surface, but nothing's ever good enough." Sound familiar? I chuckled. "You have no idea." She mentioned she used to be friends with a wedding planner who ruined her ceremony. My eyebrows shot up. She said that. She didn't name names, but I've been around long enough to connect the dots. I could feel the corner of my mouth twitch into a grin. Chelsea continued. "Anyway, she's trying to plan this post-wedding gala thing, some married life launch party for her and her husband. Big production, but she's already alienated half the team. Honestly, I'm thinking of dropping the contract." I leaned back in my chair. "What if I could offer you someone else?" There was a pause. Then, "You're not serious." "Oh, I'm dead serious." The gala was Kayla's new obsession, a last-ditch attempt to reclaim the social narrative. She called it the glow-up reception. It was supposed to be an elevated redo of the wedding. Same couple, same vows, but bigger, better, classier. White carpet, garden lights, acoustic musicians, signature cocktails. A guest list packed with influencers and colleagues and high school friends who only cared about the open bar. Kayla pitched it like it was a celebration of second chances, but I knew better. It was a do-over. A public statement. Proof that she could bounce back from failure and still land on her feet in Louboutins. Chelsea offered to keep us in the loop under the radar. She wasn't the type to get involved in family feuds, but she was the type to despise ungrateful clients who treated her staff like dirt. Over the next 3 weeks, Liv and I worked in the shadows. We didn't sabotage. We didn't manipulate. We simply monitored. Every vendor Kayla approached, we either knew them directly or were 1 degree of separation away. Every brand she tagged for sponsorship, Liv had contacts who could verify her actual social media numbers, which, by the way, were inflated using a bot service she subscribed to 3 years ago and forgot to cancel. We weren't loud. We weren't aggressive. We were thorough. Meanwhile, Liv and I were building something real. Our consulting business, Ever True Events, had gone from weekend side hustle to full-time work within 6 months. Word spread fast, especially after 2 of Liv's corporate events went viral on Instagram for their insanely creative themes. We didn't advertise. We didn't need to. Our inbox stayed full. One afternoon, Liv came into the room holding a familiar-looking invitation. White envelope, gold embossed lettering. Qley and Brandon's glow-up reception. "You got one too?" she asked, handing it to me. I opened it and read the over-the-top cursive. "We couldn't be happier to invite you to a celebration of our love. Bigger, better, and brighter than ever." There was no RSVP deadline, no mention of formal attire, just dress to impress. I laughed. "You think she knows we're behind half her ghosted emails and last-minute vendor drops?" Liv shrugged. "If she does, she's pretending she doesn't. We didn't RSVP. Not yet. We had a different idea. We started laying the groundwork for what we'd come to call the reveal. We didn't want to just get even. That wasn't the point anymore. The goal was bigger than that. We wanted truth. We wanted her friends, the ones she lied to. We wanted her social media followers, the ones she tried to impress. We wanted our family, the ones she manipulated, to see her for who she really was. Not through screaming or accusations or a viral video. Through facts, receipts, reality. We contacted a few key vendors Qley had ghosted, ones she'd stiffed on payment or talked down to. Liv offered to feature them in a showcase event Ever True was planning in late spring, a collaborative vendor appreciation night. In return, they agreed to share their experiences publicly once the gala had passed. We gathered contracts, screenshots, email threads, the way she'd promised one florist exposure in exchange for free labor. The way she'd berated a stylist for making her look too basic. The way she demanded a venue waive cleanup fees because I'm basically a brand ambassador. Every piece of it was organized, labeled, and backed up. But the piece to resistance? A message from Brandon. It arrived unexpectedly. Late one night. A DM to Liv's business account. "I'm sorry. You deserve better. Can we talk?" Liv stared at the screen for a long time before turning it toward me. "You think it's a trap?" she asked. I didn't think so. Brandon was never cruel, just complicit. He wasn't malicious like Qley, but he was passive, the kind of guy who avoided conflict until it bit him in the ankle. Liv replied professionally, asking him to clarify. He sent a voice note. We sat on the couch and listened to it twice. He sounded tired, broken. He apologized for not standing up for Liv. Said he felt pressured into the wedding, that Qley made him feel small and replaceable, that he knew the gala was her way of rewriting the past, and that he wasn't sure if he could go through with it. "She's spiraling," he said. "Everything has to be a performance. I don't even know who she's trying to convince anymore." Then he said the words we never expected to hear. "I think I'm going to leave her." After the gala. That changed everything. Liv and I sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Not out of joy, not out of vindication, but because we realized just how deep the cracks went. Qley hadn't just pushed us away. She'd pushed everyone away. The gala wasn't a celebration. It was a last stand. And we had front row seats. But we didn't want it to explode. We wanted it to unravel. So we changed course. Instead of pulling strings, we let the strings speak for themselves. We made sure the vendors knew their worth. We made sure the influencers who received invites knew the full story, including the original wedding, the guest ban, and the public smear campaign. We made sure Chelsea had backup staff and a full record of Qley's payment history, which, surprise, included multiple overdue invoices. And we waited. Not with anger. Not with fear. With calm. Because when someone builds their entire world on a lie, the truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs to walk in the room. The day of the gala arrived like a thunderstorm on the horizon. Chelsea texted us an update that morning. Venues prepped. Vendors briefed. Vibe is tense AF. Buckle up. We dressed like we weren't going to war. Because we weren't. We were going to a party. But we were bringing the truth with us. Qley didn't know we were coming. Our names weren't on the guest list. But she didn't lock the doors. And by the time we stepped into the venue, she had no idea that everyone else already knew. Not yet. Qley had always believed in two things, image and control. Image meant perfectly curated Instagram posts, surface-level friendships, and the illusion of effortless elegance. Control meant having the last word, manipulating the narrative, bending others to her will with subtle guilt or outright tantrums. But the one thing she never anticipated, never even considered, was the power of walking away. Not storming out, not slamming doors, not revenge in the form of shouting matches or social media rants. Just walking away, silently, strategically, and then letting the truth rise like a slow tide until it washed over everything she built. That's what Liv and I had done, and the tide had finally reached the shore. The glow-up reception was hosted at a renovated greenhouse venue tucked into the outskirts of the city. High ceilings, soft lighting, string quartets. It was beautiful. And full, at least for the first hour. Liv and I arrived late, deliberately. Qley hadn't seen us in the crowd, not yet. But we saw her. She was dressed in a gown that probably cost more than her car payment. Her hair was curled just enough to look effortless, her makeup immaculate. Brandon stood beside her like a cardboard cutout, stiff and checked out. If anyone had noticed, they weren't saying anything. Not yet. What they were noticing, however, was that something felt off. The string quartet was missing the cello. One of the florists Qley had stiffed had only filled half the centerpieces. The rest sat awkwardly empty, glass bowls surrounded by napkin-wrapped pebbles as filler. The catered bar had a line stretching past the hallway because the bartenders were down one person and only serving wine. None of the signature cocktails Qley had advertised in her invite. I could hear it in the whispers. She said there'd be champagne towers. Is this it? Didn't she have a planner? And above it all, there was Qley, floating from group to group, smiling like everything was perfect. It was a performance, and she was clinging to it with white knuckles. Until the reveal. Liv and I didn't need to say anything. We had help. Chelsea, true to her word, had invited a few choice guests, professionals from the event world who'd been on the receiving end of Qley's abuse. They weren't there to cause drama. They were just observant, watching, taking mental notes. And then there was Brandon's cousin, Danielle. Sharp, direct, zero tolerance for nonsense. She approached us about halfway through the evening, holding a half-eaten hors d'oeuvre in one hand and her phone in the other. You, Jacob? I nodded, a little unsure. I figured, she said. Liv's work is all over this place. Even if your sister tried to scrub the fingerprints. You're the ones who pulled out before the wedding, right? We are. She gave a satisfied nod. Good, because I've got something you'll want to hear. She held out her phone and hit play on a voicemail. Qley's voice. Sharp. Cold. I don't care what she planned originally. I want her out of this story. I want people talking about me. Not her color palettes. Not her flowers. Not her stupid rustic glamour Pinterest boards. Me. Got it. It was dated 2 weeks before the wedding. Left on a vendor's voicemail by mistake. Saved. Shared. And now in our hands. Danielle crossed her arms. She asked me to delete it. Said it was private. But the second she started throwing Brandon under the bus to the family, I decided she didn't deserve my loyalty. Liv and I looked at each other. We didn't need to expose Qley. She'd already done it herself. But we could make sure everyone else heard it too. Chelsea gave us the go-ahead. Danielle uploaded the voicemail to a shared link and quietly sent it to a group chat that included about a third of the gala attendees, most of whom had their phones out anyway, bored and scrolling because the big surprise fireworks display had been quietly canceled due to budget issues. It spread like wildfire. At first, there was just murmuring, then laughter, then some very loud, very awkward gasps. One of the bridesmaids looked like she might be sick. Qley froze mid-sentence during a toast when someone, an older man in a tux, walked right past her without acknowledging her, muttering, disgraceful. She blinked, looked around. The buzz was building. Phones were out. Heads were turning. Someone whispered her name and the words control freak. Then another word. Sabotage. She turned toward the bar and saw us. Liv and I, side by side, glasses in hand. Qley's smile twitched like a muscle spasm. She walked straight toward us, weaving through the crowd like a woman possessed. What did you do? She hissed, trying to keep her voice low. I met her gaze calmly. Nothing you didn't do to yourself. You came here to ruin this. No, Liv said. We came here to witness it. Qley's eyes darted between us. You think this makes you better than me? No, I replied. But it proves we were right. She stared at us for a long time. Her jaw clenched. Then she turned to Liv, like she'd been holding something in and finally couldn't stop herself. "You're a parasite," she whispered. "You latched onto my wedding, my vendors, my vision. You couldn't stand not being the center of attention, so you stole it." Liv's face didn't flinch. She didn't back down. Instead, she leaned forward and said, quiet and razor-sharp, "You begged me to help. I gave you everything. And the second people liked it more than you cut me out. That's not theft. That's your own insecurity catching up with you." Kayla blinked, like someone had slapped her. And then came the moment. Brandon. He walked up behind her, shoulders squared, jaw tight. "I think we need to talk," he said. Kayla turned. "Not now." "Yes, now." He looked at Liv, then at me. "You two have a minute?" I nodded. He motioned toward a quiet corner of the venue. What followed was brief. Brandon apologized. Sincerely. He admitted he'd let Kayla run the show for too long. That he'd seen what she did, heard how she spoke about Liv, and didn't step in when he should have. That he was done playing the background character in his own marriage. And then he said the words Kayla never saw coming. "I've already filed." Her face fell. "What?" she choked out. Brandon didn't flinch. "I told you. After the gala." Kayla staggered backward like she'd been punched. "You can't." "I can." And I did. She turned to me like I'd forced his hand. But I just said, actions have consequences. Word got around quickly. By the time the night ended, Kayla had vanished. Brandon stayed behind, shaking hands, thanking vendors, apologizing where needed. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying. That was more than I could say for her. The next morning, her Instagram was deactivated. Family texts went silent. And Liv? She slept in, smiling for the first time in what felt like years. It's been over a year since that night. We haven't seen Kayla since. She moved out of state shortly after the divorce was finalized. Mom tried to guilt trip us back into contact, but we didn't budge. We told her we're open to a relationship, but not one where gaslighting and favoritism are brushed off as just how families are. That boundary held. It always will. As for Liv and me, Ever True Events is thriving. We're booked out 6 months in advance. Clients trust her. Vendors love her. And her name, her real name, is finally the one on everyone's lips. No more working in the shadows. No more hiding behind someone else's spotlight. We earn this. And as I watch her now, head high, hands steady, laughter unforced, I realize something. The best revenge wasn't destroying Kayla. It was making sure she had no place in the life we built. Because nothing hurts a narcissist more than becoming irrelevant. And that was our final line.
Of fire ants.
No.
And she survived because she was bit like 1,000 times by these fire ants. And somehow or another, the ant bites and the adrenaline that caused it helped. Hey, don't jump down. Stay up there, buddy. Is what kept her alive.
What?
Yeah.
Wow. That's when you start going religion shit.
I know.
Like how did that happen?
Stay up here, buddy. Stay up here.
Ant bites.
Yeah. 1999. Her parachute malfunctioned. She fell 4,500 feet. Her backup parachute opened at 700 feet but quickly deflated. She continued to plummet towards the ground at 80 miles an hour. Miraculously, she survived the fall thanks to the fact she landed directly on a mound of fire ants. Doctors believe the intense shock of being stung over 200 times by the ants released a surge of adrenaline which kept her heart beating.
Oh, it's like a clear. She got cleared by ants.
Isn't that nuts?
That is kooky. It's like when those guys jump off the Golden Gate Bridge and a guy jumped off, broke all his bones, and a seal pushed him to the shore.
Whoa.
That's in the documentary The Bridge. And
a friend of mine did that and died.
Really?
Yeah, he killed himself.
It's the number one spot to kill yourself.
Yeah, R.I.P. Tony Anagoni. He's a buddy of mine that was a professional pool player that I did commentary with him on a pool match in the 90s. He was in a book called Playing Off the Rail. It's a great book by this guy, David McCumber, who was Hunter S. Thompson's editor in, I want to say, Seattle, something like that. I forget what newspaper. But when Hunter was like off the rails and out of his fucking mind, too, it was perfect. Another different kind of off the rail.
Right.
So he followed my friend Tony all across the country gambling. It's a great book about like pool hustling.
Yeah.
Tony was like a world-class professional pool player, and they went around the country gambling, and I don't know what happened with him, but I lost touch with them, and then...
was he Golden Gate?
Yeah.
Oh, damn. It's like they all know to go there.
Well, he was a San Francisco guy. He lived up there his whole life. And I got this message from a friend of mine. Tony jumped off the bridge. I was like, no.
Whoa. Crazy. Well,
It's weird because I watch matches sometimes on YouTube, and he's doing the commentary for the
oh,
matches.
that's crazy.
It's so strange because he seems so happy. He's enjoying himself. They're cracking up. And I'm like, what is it that makes someone want to end it? You know, what is it? Like, what was... I guess he had, like, some failed business ventures, and he was going bankrupt. And
Well, depression is, was way more unresearched back then.
Yeah.
You probably just thought, something's wrong with me. I got to end this pain.
yeah.
But damn. But yeah, everybody who lived, they said... Each of them said separately, right when my hand left the rail, I regretted it.
Oh, yeah. They all
Every
say
single
that.
one.
They all say that, yeah. Everybody who lives.
So don't do it.
It's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Do you remember the one in downtown L.A. where the guy was, like, on... I think he shot himself with a shotgun. He was, like, standing on the edge of a bridge, and it was live on TV. Do you remember that one?
No,
There was, like,
no.
a standoff. They were trying to get him to not jump, but he had a shotgun. I think I'm conflating it.
Pull it up.
But I'm pretty sure he blew his brains out on TV.
Damn. Well, I knew about the fat guy with the gun in the mouth. The
Oh,
old,
yeah.
Politician guy.
Was he a judge? Was he a
Maybe a judge.
dirty judge?
Yeah, yeah.
That's that song, Hey Man, Nice Shot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a hot video when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
What is it? Taste of Death or
Faces.
Faces
Bud
of Death.
Dwyer.
Bud Dwyer. That's it.
That was one of the first ones where you got to see a guy die, like a viral video. He put a giant gun in his mouth. Look
Yeah.
at 44.
And everybody goes, no, don't do it. Oh, great. He's like, stay
Hang on,
back.
relax. Everyone stay
Yeah.
calm. He just shoved it in his mouth and boom. Blew the top of his dome off.
And now we just see people getting shot on Twitter